Hey there. So, if you're a new member, you've just joined, or perhaps you've been here from the start, I want to be able to, in a couple minutes now, take you through exactly what we mean by human skills. What are human skills? Why does it matter? And why is it a central part of the framework and the experience of Humble Mind? Why does it matter? And also, you'll be able to hopefully see that it's going to make your experience here as part of Humble Mind a lot different to what you get on LinkedIn or perhaps other communities, because we're here to make ourselves better and to think differently and to learn the important stuff. Learn not just trends and what's happening over here and understanding an industry. That's great, and that makes up part of the picture. But if we're not doing deeper work and understanding who we are and how we're made up, then we're not really setting ourselves up to be able to shift anything big in our lives, both in our personal and in our professional lives. So I want to be able to take a quick deep dive with you on the methodology, if you like, the philosophy, whatever you want to call it, on what makes Humble Mind tick and why we focus on human skills. So to give you a quick definition to kick us off, when I say human skills, I mean the innately human things that we, so far, are the only ones that are able to do on the planet and in the cosmos, right? That's sort of the natural but very uniquely human traits, characteristics, behaviors, actions that we take on a daily basis. The ability to imagine, to communicate, to understand and to show empathy, to be able to listen correctly and ask questions, to be able to make decisions, to be able to look at problems in a creative way and to solve them, to be able to tell stories. Now, there are many, many, many different human skills, but specifically here, and the focus that we have on Humble Mind Sessions is the focus on the interaction part of it. So not just the skills that you have on your own, but in the way that it shows up when you're collaborating, connecting, and interacting with other people, specifically with other people. Because the way that we show up in conversation, in interactions with other people, is directly related to how we can influence them and how we influence ourselves in the way that we feel about ourselves. And when we're able to tap into that mindset, and when we're able to allow our actions to be dictated by a certain set of beliefs and a certain set of traits that we are in agreement with, then suddenly life looks very differently. Suddenly you're running a business, or you're creating an idea, or you're running a team, whatever it might be, in a completely different mindset, in a humble mindset. And I want to go through that very quickly. It all starts off with who you are, what you bring to the table. And this is why I love the Humble Mind community so much, because it's a really sort of diverse, motley crew of really cool, interesting, different people. And the reason why they're different is not just the obvious differences, which matter, which is, where you were born, your gender, your perspectives, your life experience, and all of that, but also the different skills and the kind of the abilities that you present and that you have in a unique and special combination. And for the purposes of what we're doing here, I've separated that into three different parts. The first is your competencies. So competencies are things that you learn. You learn them by doing. So, for example, public speaking. And a competency is interesting because there's no one way or no one right way to do it. For example, if you think of public speakers, you can think of probably 5 or 6 public speakers right now. They're all quite different, aren't they? But they're all public speakers. Or they all might be electrifying keynote speakers, or great speakers online if you've watched them on YouTube. They're all quite different. They have their own charisma or their different focus or a certain style, but they're all competent at it. They all have that ability. So competency is something that you learn and that you understand the basics of before you then make it your own. And you are able then to take that basic utility and add your own unique flair to it. And that's what makes you competent at it. So we all have certain competencies. Then the next is what our knowledge is made up of. Now, this is in a sense similar to competency, but this is something that requires an actual knowledge base or some level of technical criteria in order to get to it. So how to develop software. You don't just become competent at developing software overnight. You learn how to do it, and in some senses, hopefully in most senses, you have a certain qualification or a level of knowledge in order to then demonstrate that competency. So where competencies here are based on practice and experience, knowledge competency is based on criteria and being able to learn and to demonstrate a certain level of competency. For example, how to be a lawyer. You don't just become a lawyer. You don't, practice to become a lawyer. You go and study to become a lawyer. And then over time, that competency grows as you then get that experience based on the knowledge that you've got. So we've got competency, we've got knowledge, and then the last one here is the natural abilities that you have. These might be things that you were born with or that you take to with very little training or knowledge or practice beforehand, like running, like being able to pick up music. Mozart certainly had a musical ability. He was, I think he was about 3 or 4 when he was starting to compose his first basic, piano pieces, which is incredible because he had a natural ability. And then he learned how to play the piano, which is a competency. And then much later, he went to music school where he picked up the knowledge. So these are all different elements of what makes who you are. Your skills, your experience, and the unique combination that you show up to on an everyday basis, and also how you show up on these Humble Mind sessions. Now, let's go up a level, because as I was, doing a lot of deep thinking, as you can see, I've put a lot of thinking into this over the last couple months, squirreling away all sorts of notes on diary and pieces of paper, anything that I can find. I've been thinking a lot about skills and human skills and how they show up and what they're made of. And it seems that certain skills are sort of simpler than others. So you might have a skill like being able to ask questions, right? Now, once there's a certain level of competency in doing that, you're able to let that skill more or less stand on its own. Now I'm able to ask better questions, understand what goes into thinking about how to formulate a question. Is it an open question? Is it a closed question? Is it something that I'm seeking with intent? Am I, asking it in an unbiased way? There's certain things that make up that skill, and then you've got that skill. Let's just say for argument's sake. But there are other skills that are less like practical skills and more like traits, more like certain things that lend themselves to other kinds of interpersonal, interactive skills that go beyond just the one-dimensional. So what do I mean by this? I mean, being humble is a skill. The ability to think entrepreneurially is a skill. The ability to have an abundant and creative mindset, that's a skill. It's not something that comes overnight, but it's also not something that is made up of one thing. These are skill groups. These are groups of different things that have a certain amount of skills, not only that are there, but that work together to be able to create something new, a group of skills. The ability to debate and to reason, to understand someone's perspective, to be able to refute that and defend your own perspective, to listen, to make decisions. These are all skills, but these are really skills that are based and made up of other skills. And so the reason why it's important to kind of explain that and unpack it and blow it up is because really at Humble Mind, we are blowing apart and kind of, seeing all of the different individual skills and how they're made up. But really why we're doing that is because we want to be able to influence traits. We want to be able to influence certain parts of who you are, or at least allow you to influence who you are in your own way, so that if you're seeking to become more entrepreneurial, if you're seeking to think differently about empathy and to be able to use it in your everyday interactions, the way that you deal with other people, you're needing to not just cultivate skills, individual skills, but to put those together in unique and useful and applicable combinations so that they can show up more easily. So you understand how they're made up and you're able to then use that in an important way. For example, I used to run a video production company, and in the dealings that I had with other videographers, other industry professionals, they had the knowledge and they had the competency of being able to, really, really be kick-ass videographers, and they were able to really capture the most beautiful visuals. But they were always coming to me and to us for work. And they weren't able to kind of put that together into a unique combination where they could win their own work. And they were always wondering, wow, why is my calendar empty? Why don't I have more work? What's going on here? And so the reason why that was like that, and certainly in a lot of other industries where you've got this sort of the death of the specialty, the death of the specialist, is because there's a whole lot of really, really good individual skills going on, but the ability to combine those into useful and meaningful skill groups where you're not just a videographer anymore or a graphic designer or a business development person, but now you're moving to the level of traits where now I'm a problem solver. Now I'm here to help you think differently about your content. I'm not just a videographer, I'm a content advisor, for example. And so this is really how we're seeing skills, and specifically the ability to deal with other humans and to, project the best version of ourselves, is to understand, well, what are the individual skills that these groups of skills and these traits are made up of, and how to work on them individually. Because when we do that, and when we understand how they're made up, we're then moving up to this next level where we can now comfortably start influencing the beliefs that we have and the actions that we're taking on an everyday basis. For example, if I want to think courageously about the future, if I want to be an emotionally available and emotionally intelligent leader to my team, to the business I'm building, if I want to be resilient, if I want to be able to be a proactive problem solver, you don't just do that. It's not just something that starts to happen, but it's made up of each of these smaller component skills and things, these traits that can be cultivated within you, so that when you look at how to be a problem solver, when you look at how to be an emotionally available leader or a person, even in your personal life, these things are made up of a foundation of skills and traits and certain things that you use and you believe to be true on an everyday basis. And the great news is that we have the ability to influence this. These aren't things that are set in stone. You are not stuck in a certain program or a level of routine on an everyday basis where, like, well, that's my job, that's it, I hate it, but yeah, I deserve it. The problem there is that we haven't understood what makes up those beliefs. And those beliefs are usually made up of the different skills and the different ways that we interact with ourselves and with other people. And when you learn that those interactions with other people are really made up of simple skills that can be practiced, that can be cultivated, and that can be nurtured and directed in a certain way, suddenly this all looks very different. Because suddenly I can start taking more ownership of my life. I can start being a lot more courageous in the decisions and the risks that I want to take and the things that I want to do. I can think, well, actually, I deserve a promotion, and if I'm not going to get it, I'm going to let that shine, and I'm going to do something else. I'm going to think entrepreneurially. I'm going to do something different, right? Suddenly that courage and that ability to think differently becomes possible because it shows up in your actions and it shows up in the beliefs that you have. And then that allows you to show up differently. That allows you to be able to think, well, actually, I've got a whole lot more potential because my self-worth is something I'm in control of because I know what it's made up of. And the way that I show up with other people, the impressions I make, is something that I can control and something I understand as well. So this is the humble mind map, if you like, what it means to be humble-minded and how we go about teaching and practicing these seemingly everyday and normal human skills. But it's about the combinations, the unique combinations of skills, just like the unique combination that you are with the different things that make up who you are, your experience, your knowledge, your competencies, your abilities. That's a unique combination. Now, when we start putting these skills in unique combinations and we combine that with who you are, suddenly the beliefs that you have, the actions you take on an everyday basis, and the way you show up in the world, whether it might be with your job, with your partner, with your kids, with your team, with your business, that is all changeable and malleable, and hopefully something that helps you to make better decisions, to show up differently, and to feel like life can be improved, life can be made different, life can be more humble.